Well, joining us on the line is Secretary of Energy Chris Wright. Yesterday, the president released a fact sheet talking about Venezuela, the oil industry in Venezuela. Secretary Wright, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
So let's talk about why, first of all, the United States is even interested in oil from Venezuela. The sort of general perception in the United States is that we are fully oil independent. We don't need more oil. Is there a difference between Venezuelan oil and the other kind of oil that we are fracking, for example, in Pennsylvania?
There is. The Venezuelan oil is more viscous. It's heavier crude. It's perfect for asphalt and making certain products. Also, in general, it's cheaper. So when a lot of our refineries were built in the 60s and 70s, Venezuela was a major oil supplier to the United States, and we built refineries. It's more capital, more intense refineries that can process this cheaper, high viscosity crude. And then, of course, Venezuela, over the ensuing decades, has fallen off a cliff, destroyed its country through socialism and top-down control. And so we have to find that heavy, viscous crude elsewhere. So, yeah, it's beneficial for the U.S. refineries, but really the short-term agenda with Venezuela is stop the criminality, stop the import of drugs and gangs and violence into the United States. It's just made our hemisphere a worse place to do business and a worse place to prosper. We want to fix Venezuela because that's good for Americans. Of course, it'll be good for Venezuelans, too.
So, Secretary, looking at the release that you've put out at the Energy Department, you say that it's going to help unleash prosperity and peace across the Western Hemisphere, this current U.S.-Venezuela energy deal, which would leave the United States in charge, essentially, of oil sales and disbursements therefrom. Explain how that would work.
Yes. So, look, people for 25 years have tried to stop the slide to destruction that Venezuela's been in, and President Trump just found a more creative idea. Look, there have been sanctions on Venezuelan oil, but unfortunately, they're just poorly enforced. The president said, look, they're so dependent on oil sales and drug sales as a side business, but their biggest cash source is oil sales. We're going to enforce the sanctions and embargo their oil, seal off their ability to export oil. Boy, that got a big change in the ability to dialogue with the Venezuelan government. So the agreement now is, all right, you're going to be able to sell your oil, but we're going to sell your oil. So we're just going to control the flow of Venezuelan oil. When the United States sells it, we're going to get a much higher price than the Venezuelans would get. It's not black market. It's not shadow market. It's not a criminal regime that's on the other side of that transaction. It's the United States government. So we're going to sell that oil into the marketplace, generate more money than they would have, put it in accounts that are controlled by the United States government, and then at our discretion, just deliver those funds to Venezuela. So it's going to bring more money into the country, but it's going to bring massive U.S. influence that we're only going to deliver the money and continue this arrangement if they make rapid progress on reforms, end the criminality, end the threats to the United States, start to restore rule of law back in Venezuela. I think the president is right. We're going to be able to use this tool to drive them in a positive direction. That's going to benefit Americans, and it's going to benefit Venezuelans as well.
Well, it's that latter part that I think is extraordinarily important. And a lot of critics of the president's action against Nicolas Maduro have suggested that nothing is fundamentally going to change on the ground in Venezuela, that Maduro will be gone, but Venezuela will continue to be a socialist dictatorship because, of course, the vice president of Venezuela, who has now taken over, Delcy Rodriguez, is an ardent socialist herself. In public, she's made very pro-Maduro statements, even after the extradition of the drug offender that is Nicolas Maduro. So the case that the administration seems to be making, correct me if I'm wrong, is that given the fact that the vast majority of income possible to Venezuela will now be flowing through American hands, that money just doesn't get to Venezuela unless reforms occur that move Venezuela in the direction of rule of law and future elections.
Very well stated, Ben. That's exactly the thing. And there's huge incentives here. If they start to move in those positive directions, what does that mean? That means American businesses are going to go back into Venezuela. Venezuelans' oil production is going to grow again, which is going to generate more revenue, more money for them. But you're right. We're going to use that leverage. This money is only flowing if things improve in Venezuela. Their interactions with the United States change dramatically, and they start to improve their country. Ultimately, this is a process that will take some time. But at the end of the day, We want to see representative government, democracy, freedom, pro-American government in power in Venezuela. That's a transition from where they are today. Absolutely. That's a process. But we want to do that through a process without it becoming a failed state or going back to the narco-terrorist state it's been for the last 20 years.
So, Secretary, one of the other questions that's arisen here is getting American companies involved in the oil industry in Venezuela requires a level of stability and an assurance that things aren't going to take a turn for the worse, that Venezuela isn't going to renationalize its oil fields as soon as, for example, President Trump is out of office, or the United States is not going to simply walk away from this arrangement and leave American companies who do require years and years of investment in order to see any sort of recapitalization holding the bag. What sort of measures is the Trump administration looking forward to taking for the long term that ensure the security of investments and that transitional process?
Yes, and so there's talk about, they need, tens of billions of dollars to rebuild massive infrastructure. That's true, and that'll take a long time. That's not going to start next week. But what is going to happen, Chevron's been there for 100 years continuously. Now we're going to have a constructive Venezuelan government, a more active involvement from the U.S. government. Can Chevron expand and grow their operations like starting tomorrow? Yes, they can. Do they want to do that? Yes, they do. So it's not a matter of the government having to twist anyone's arm or make stuff or even give them guarantees. They just see President Trump and the U.S. government's involvement automatically makes business conditions better in Venezuela, and they've been operating under the existing conditions. These are improving business conditions today. And companies that recently left or been looking to go in, they're like, hey, now I think is a good time. People are going to go in slowly. The rate of investment is going to pick up from near nothing to a meaningful amounts. But the $10 billion, 10-year development projects, they may not start for another year or two. But that's okay. The trajectory has been only downward. The trajectory immediately is going to be upward. Ben, I've guessed we could have 30, 40, 50% higher Venezuelan oil production 12 to 18 months from now than we have today. In fact, I think it's quite likely that will happen.
Well, that's Secretary of Energy Chris Wright. Again, it's an amazing thing the Trump administration has done. We look forward to the fulfilling of that sort of potential. Secretary, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Ben. Appreciate you.